Hey everybody. I don't really want to do reviews, but this happens to relate to something that I'm trying to develop and an idea that I'm trying to develop. And I think the Google Pixel Fold is an excellent example of this. If you're looking for my review of what I think about this, this is a long-term review. I've had the phone for I think two or basically as long as it's been out. Um, This is my second one. The first one died right when the warranty went out, which I got replaced with a different one, and that's relevant to why I'm reviewing this. But overall, I think it's an excellent example of a failure, in particular of a failure in a development process. In short, it's not a very good product. 2 out of 5 stars. It's a mediocre product, and it's a good example of a product from a rather directionless company. Why do I think this is an interesting example? Let's imagine we have our usual software development process or even product development process. We figure out a product and we build it. This is like the version 0. We haven't released it out to customers yet. This is the first variation of it. So we build it, we release it, we're very happy, everybody's excited. We get some feedback, we improve the product, we release an improved product, and we're happy and excited, and we repeat this cycle until our business continues to make money. And this is what I think is kind of the idealized development process, and it is a total lie. This isn't actually how things work at all. Um, it is not representative of reality, it's rather idealistic. Closer to reality is something like this. We build a product, we release a product, and we validate that product. Then we integrate our validation into our development process. We improve, we release improved product, we validate. Why is this different than this one? I kind of did this intentionally. I said get feedback here. This was a loaded statement here. You just don't get feedback if you're relying on people to tell you feedback, proactively give you feedback. You're not going to actually get accurate information. You're going to get a particular perspective on the product. So get feedback is not accurate. Validate is a more general term to say that you're going to see how your product achieves the intended goals. And there needs to be a variety of feedbacks, variety of mechanisms for this, not just soliciting feedback. You need to actively design your validation process to incorporate a variety of different sources. Check how it actually works in the real world as if you used it like a user. Eat your own dog food. That's a very valuable validation mechanism. Of course, getting feedback is also a valuable validation process. There's observation of metrics and errors and failures that might be happening with the product, that people might not be reporting, that you want to be able to observe. And then when it comes to integrating that validation, you want to be able to have a organization and a development process that can actually integrate that validation feedback. Likewise, you need a development process and an organization that can actually apply that to improving things. It can't just go nowhere. And that's because we do have, in addition, some human factors as well. This is not just a process done in the abstract. This is a process that is done by developers, support, and product people. And these are not just, abstract entities either. These are real human people that are doing human things. The developers want interesting projects. They want to have an impact. They want their compensation to increase. They want to structure their impact to demonstrate why they receive that compensation. Support needs to be able to triage stuff. They need to be able to interact with customers in a way that enables them to triage stuff. They need to be able to interact with developers, and they need to be able to inform product development. And product needs to actually propose valuable projects, not just changes such as renaming Hangouts to messages that just seem to be fluff. That would be a silly product direction. In addition, when we're doing support, that's not even completely what we're doing. We're not just working on addressing projects. Developers are expected to fix bugs, and this is a activity that requires competence. In fact, it can require a significant amount of competence to fix certain bugs. The really obvious bugs, the big bugs, those are the easy ones. There's kind of a joke when you get further and further in your software development career that you really hope something explodes. That's the kind of failure that is big and observable. You can fix that. Something that crashes, wonderful. What you don't want is these subtle bugs, like data corruption bugs or slowly deviations from expected behavior over time. Those you don't want. Those are hard to fix, they're hard to observe, and they're hard to push through. Sometimes they can involve large changes to core technologies that are going to be very complicated to push through. Support. It's not just triaging bugs and talking to developers. You also need to educate users. Um, as a product evolves, there's going to be more things involved with interacting with that project, and you're going to need to educate your users on what the expectations of the product are. You might have a better idea than your customers of how a product should be used. So you need to educate your customers to maximize the utility of their product. And then product people just want to propose valuable projects. So, as I mentioned, the obvious bugs are fixed first, leaving the less obvious bugs after a while. And as a developer, as a human in a company, you're pushing for making sure you have a paycheck, right? This is America. You don't get a paycheck, you don't get healthcare. So you want to demonstrate impact so you get a bigger paycheck. Because these days, given how unstable things are, people want larger and larger paychecks to compensate for the perceived instability in the economy. So you're going to focus on the big impact things. Going from nothing to something is the big impact stuff. Going from no product to a product is big impact. Improving on a product is less observable. You can spend, let's examine, let's say the hinge in the Google Pixel Fold. Let's say you made that slightly better to use, it was slightly more robust or something. Most of the time, your customers aren't going to notice that. It's not going to be a big impact to your customers. Your organization isn't really going to notice that either. And if you have a bad manager, which there are many, then they're not going to care that you improve the reliability of the hinge. So your competent developers aren't going to be working on those low impact things. They're going to be moving on to only the big impact stuff. This is a problem. This becomes a confluence of scenarios that are going to end up with a significant problem in your development process and product. Your support, you are relying on to triage these bugs to tell you which ones are actually going to impact your users are going to have a harder time observing these bugs. So are your users. Your users may run into bugs and not even notice they run into bugs. They may run into data corruption bugs and just go, "Oh, that's weird," and just not bother. And now you have your senior developers, they're again working on the big impact stuff because that's what they need to do to continue to make the line go up in their organization. And you have your less experienced developers working on the minor improvements. And your less experienced developers are working with your support, who are working with issues that are harder to observe. So neither your support, your users, or your initial developers involved in the process are able to observe difficult bugs, much less fix them. And some of these bugs are very nefarious. Many of them can be resolved by resetting the device or resetting the software. I'm sure we've all run into the case where we had some wacky issue and we're like, turn it off and turn it back on, and the issue's gone. It works all the time. So well, fantastically well. But the reality is, you're not fixing the bug, you're just avoiding it. It's a mitigation. Outside of things like cosmic rays or something flipping bits, which um, is a real problem at scale, and we're not prepared for it, but that's a separate story. Uh, you're not actually going to resolve these issues. They're going to be still present, and subtle data corruption bugs may be still present, subtle usability issues may be still present, and they're just mitigated by this reset capability. Support frequently tells you just try a reset. And if you report it works, it's like whatever, we've resolved the bug. They just need to reset it. How many times have you run into that? I've run into it with Google. I ran into it with the Google Pixel Fold. There was a weird problem with my initial setup of the Google Pixel Fold, and I contacted support, and their only path forward was for me to reset the device. I know, being an experienced software developer, that there was an actual deeper reason for that failure, and resetting the device might have mitigated it, but that error was still there. So this is kind of the hypothesis that I'm working on. And I would like to develop this further, and this is just kind of my initial thoughts on this. Um, but I wanted to get this out because it was poignant and timely with this Google Pixel Fold debacle that I'll tell you about in a moment. That is that kind of development process, this classic development process of support and junior developers and junior support working on the initial stuff, leads to an increase in bugs that are unapproachable by the organization. And what I mean by unapproachable is the organization can neither observe these issues, or even if they are able to observe them, they're not able to act on them. So the issues are not observable because, they're so subtle, or they get mitigated by the reset of the system, or people just become fatigued to the problems that they don't observe them. And even if they are observed them, they might be really complicated to fix. But at this point, they're low impact issues. In other words, the subtle ones, they're going to impact a very few people, and they have a mitigation. So they're not going to get triaged very high. You're not going to get the experienced developers digging into this and investing in it because it's low impact, and the line must go up. So your senior developers aren't going to waste their time on something that isn't going to make the line go up. With all that in mind, let's actually get into the review. I apologize for the audio and video. OBS can't seem to do my webcam and my nice microphone simultaneously, and all I have left is my low quality webcam because, well, I'm using the phone to do the review, so this is what we got. And we can see why I am doing this, why this is an appropriate time for me to do this review, is because one of my phones broke and I got a new one to replace it. This phone broke 2 days after the warranty expired, which is, a thing. And I paid to get a replacement device. It didn't cost that much to get the replacement device, and I will demonstrate how I broke this phone right now. Yep. I don't know why it broke. I've tried to determine why it broke, but the screen just decided to give up the ghost when I opened it the other day. I do have the device replacement program, so it didn't cost too much for me to get a replacement. Curious that it broke 2 days after the warranty, and curious that the interior screen broke. This is my second foldable phone. I have a Motorola Razr, the new one, and that one I have beat up quite a lot. I've dropped it, kicked it. I've demonstrated how robust it is by waving the little hinge around, open, close, like tricorder side, whip it out, and beep, 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 and then put it up my face, slam it shut. It's still working great. I wouldn't have gotten a Google Pixel Fold if it wasn't so cheap to replace it with another Google Pixel Fold. So I don't know why it broke. Maybe it's a fluke, whatever. So we have my old device and we have my new device. So all I had to do, right, is restore my new device from my old device. Spoiler, that didn't work that well. It's never worked with a Google device. It just doesn't work compared to the Apple experience of it just working. The backup and restore for Google devices is a lot. But we'll get into that in a bit. Well, let's first talk about the hardware. And I'll do it with the new one. Nothing new in my review of the hardware. This is a long-term review, so that, this has been talked about before. I'll give some of my thoughts on the general design. Overall, I like the look of it, and I like how it feels in the hand. The weight is a bit much. You drop this on your face if you're, snoozing, watching your phone above you, and you will get a bruise. Some of these sharp edges are pretty brutal. Straight to the eyeball. You'll break your glasses or something like that. So it's kind of weighty. I'm a pretty big person with pretty big hands, so I'm okay with that weight.
That isn't a huge problem. Problem is the cameras. I don't know why these cameras are here. I don't know why there are three cameras. I don't know why they chose this design for the three cameras. It really detracts from the whole experience, this camera bar. I know we've fallen into some race to the bottom in shitification for cell phones. And I think the choice of having this ridiculous camera bump is a good example of that. Somewhere, the line went up for cameras in this. Somebody thought this was a good idea. The reality is, it really detracts from the rest of the experience of this phone. I think the target market and maybe the utilization of this phone isn't going to be for the cameras. They're not very good cameras, anyways. The color rendition on them is really bad. I've tried all sorts of settings to get the color to be rendered nicely. It just doesn't do that well. I prefer my 2005 Foveon for color rendition. Yeah, the Foveon is known for its color rendition. It's kind of its thing, but it is from 2005. It's like 15 years old. I think we should be able to, especially with three cameras, get something close by now. But I might be wrong on there. Anyways, I don't care about cameras. These are just a waiting lump that are annoying to have on this camera. The first thing I will note is that the cameras are really weighty. The weight of this phone is very unnatural with these cameras here. You end up needing to support the cameras because that's where all the weight is, and it's a natural place to grip it with the camera. But look at this. Look at where my fingers are. Yeah, they're all smudging the lenses right here. So even when you want to use the cameras, you kind of gotta pull them out and like rub it on your pants or something to get the cameras to a state where you can use it without it being blurry. Um, then other aspects about this, awkward weight there. Uh, Doubly so is that the natural place for me to hold this is where this power button is. Um, and it's the fingerprint reader. I don't like that. It's really annoying. I don't want to always unlock my phone every time I need to grip the phone solidly. If I'm trying to get this out of my pants, I'm trying to get this out of a jacket or something like that, I need a solid grip on it. But the only way I can do that is by accidentally unlocking the phone. And this is sometimes a problem. I don't want to unlock it. So you got to be really careful on how you grip this thing to make sure you're not accidentally actuating one of these buttons. And to make matters worse, these buttons are smooth. Both of them are rather featureless and smooth. Could have added some detents. That would have been pretty easy. I don't know why they're not there. It's really annoying having them placed here and be featureless. Um, it's not very accessible either. You got pretty good grip on this thing, but then you really have a hard time, especially if you're wearing gloves, feeling these things. A long time ago, I had some nerve damage to this hand, and I still have some residual problems there. Nothing really that impacts me these days, but I can simulate very effectively what it would be like to not have a sensitive nerves on your hand, some type of peripheral neuropathy, a neuropathy. I don't know how to say it. Whatever. Um, and if I simulate that, and this happens to older people, people with injuries, this is a real thing that happens. And if I simulate what that would be like for some level of neuropathy, yeah, you really can't notice these buttons. So if you put on gloves, you can't notice the buttons. If you have nothing but the idealistic Google hand, you really can't notice these buttons. I don't understand. Oh, and also when it comes to cameras, it's got this front one here, and it's got a front one on the inside. Those are great. I've had no issues with those. This little punch out, no problem. The interior camera is up here. Great positioning. I've had no problems with those. I think they work well. So the other thing you'll note right off the bat is this is shiny. Look how shiny that is. I can't imagine somebody went outside, you know, outside where grass is and thought this was a good idea. It doesn't make sense. We have the technology to build matte screens that work well. I have one right in front of me. It's a giant matte screen. It has no weird shininess to it. It works great. Very higher resolution than these, and fantastic screen. Um, so we can do it, but we decide not to. I don't know why. Outer screen, not too bad. That's pretty standard with phones. We're obsessed with this featureless black slab of glass. Uh, Bad design. So that's pretty normal. Nothing new there. I can't say that Google's doing worse there. However, when we get to the interior screen, holy potatoes. This is just so shiny. You might be able to see my reflection here. Let me see if I can. Well, anyways, I can't tell where the camera is. Oh yeah, you can see me. Hey, what's up, dudes? Yeah, it's so shiny. Outside, it's unusable. It truly is an unusable screen outside. Um, Fortunately, pretty easy to fix. It does come with an interior screen protector. That adds extra shininess to it. You can remove that and get some of the shininess gone. What I did is I removed it and put on a matte screen protector, and I'll add a link to this matte screen protector below. It works really well, especially for the interior screen. Of course, this one's broken, but you can already see it's not as reflective, and this actually makes it usable outside. And pretty much you need this matte screen protector, which probably violates your warranty, but yeah. Anyways. I'll put a link to that. I like it a lot. The matte screen protector. So going back to just the black featureless slab that we've decided is somehow a good idea for cell phones. Not only are they slippery and featureless. Oh, look at this. This is matte. Why didn't we do this? Anyways, it has this cool design, matte design, right? Right. And I'm sure somebody thought, oh, this is going to look good. But you know what's going to happen for everybody who gets this, right? You got this cool design. There you go. It's gone. There's no point of having that design when the only way to use a phone is to slap a case on it. To make matters worse, is integrating a case with this phone is not great. It needs double-sided tape to affix the case to the phone, and especially this external front case, it needs double-sided tape. Otherwise, it just doesn't. It's really annoying to use. But the case is nearly essential for multiple reasons. One is, right, so it gives you the protection of the slab, gives you a bit more grip, which is really essential. It gives some definition to the buttons, so they're a bit more noticeable instead of the featureless aspect. And also, it prevents your fingers from totally occluding the audio speakers and microphones. These aren't very good. Just like I don't understand. They're just not very good. And the way you want to hold this phone, you naturally end up putting your finger on one of them, which makes them even worse. It's very difficult to hold this phone in such a way that the phone doesn't have a problem with you holding it. Like you're not accidentally actuating the fingerprint reader or including one of the microphones or something like that. And this is sad because we could have done two things in the evolution of cell phones, but we decided not to for reasons. One is we could have better integrated the cases with the phone. By that I mean you add some detents to the phone or some padding to the phone that you can match with the casing, then your cases can go on more solidly. They don't need this very delicate kind of curve around, which this is a carbon fiber case. It works well for that. But I've used other cases that just really don't have the precision engineering necessary to have this lip here that keeps it on. And even this isn't kept on very well. You can see this kind of flops off. So we could have designed our phones to accept cases as an essential part of the phone. But for some reason, we decided not to. We decided that featureless black slabs that don't integrate well with cases is how we're going to go. And we have this weird disconnect between the design of the phones, which, has this, includes like the color of the phone, doesn't matter, you're going to put a case on it. And the nice texturing here, doesn't matter, you're going to put a case on it. And that conflicts with always having to put a case on it. So we could have done two other things instead of this silliness. One is made the phones include case-like features in there. For instance, you could have had replaceable bumpers uh, integrated with the phone, maybe some rubber aspects, like instead of these horrible sharp edges. You could have done something like that, or you could have done the idea I mentioned with detents on the side of this to grip and otherwise integrate with the case such that when you accept that you want your case to be your style, then you have the opportunity to really put the case on there in such a way that it is secure there. But instead, we have this weird conflict that we want the phones to be styled well, but they only work well in an actual usability sense when they have a case on. Weird. So, got our case on here. Uh, chunky, chunky camera, and yeah, just kind of strange. None of these should have been, nothing I said about this being difficult to use should have been a surprise to anybody at Google that was using this phone. Like, I don't know how somebody would have used this and not pointed out those flaws in such a way where they could have done something about it during the design process. Hence my point earlier, where that kind of thing, where there are what I consider obvious flaws in the design, seem unapproachable to a company like Google, really indicates to me that they're falling into that trap. That whatever they're working on is more things like, renaming their various messaging projects again than focusing on actual usability improvements. Building a new messaging product, big impact, looks good. You'll be, your compensation uh, statement for your next level is gonna have a big line item on there. Adding detents to better integrate with your case. Like, honestly, most people aren't gonna notice. I'm gonna notice. They might notice the usability improvement. It might be a nice thing. It's definitely an improvement over this horrible usability, but um, it is low impact, so it's not going to happen at a company like Google, I suspect. Enough about the hardware. Let's talk about the software. That's its own problem. So, like I said, I got a new phone to transfer my stuff to as a replacement. And can you can you see anything different about these two phones? You might notice that they don't look the same right now. That's because backup and restore is a lie. I've had multiple Google phones. It's always a lie. I've never seen it restore a phone to the same state it was when it supposedly backed it up, which is really annoying. I've had Apple iPhones before, and I think 15 years ago, I went from one iPhone to another, and the actual backup and restore resulted in me having the same setup right off the bat. Instead, we end up with not really a restore. What it appears to do when it restores is it re-authenticates you with your Google account and it sets the app list that should be installed. I think that's it. I haven't identified anything else. And there's already problems there, which I'll get into. Um, So you do the restore by plugging one phone into the other, and it's supposed to restore it. Now, some things I understand that it can't transfer across that cable. Right? There's a secure enclave, I hope there is, on these devices, and those are designed such that you can't get stuff out. You can authenticate against stuff that's in there, but you can't get stuff out in such a way where you could restore another secure enclave with the same information. I'm okay with that not being transferred. I have ways, we rely on password managers basically to do that functionality for us, which probably is less secure than some type of secure enclave transfer, but whatever. That's how it goes. However, my wallpapers, my settings of like how the display is configured, I would expect those to be transferred. And it's worse than that because you might not be able to tell, but I have a bunch of prompts here for configuration and tutorials that I've already gone through on this device. I don't need another tutorial on how to use this device. I literally have one that I've been using for a while, but it doesn't transfer that. So you have to reconfigure so much stuff when it restores from its backup. So, I'm always mystified by this. I It's been wrong for 15 years. I don't think it's ever going to get fixed. And what's wild is I know we have the technology, right? You got a cable that goes between these two devices. It is possible to transmit data over an untrusted connection such that you can verify the data is transferred as you expected. We have cryptographic hashes that we can do. And, maybe you transfer just the cryptographic hashes over a secure mechanism via the Google account, like that's the backup and restore, and then the rest of the data can actually be transferred across using the cable that you plug in. But no, that's not what happens. You end up downloading all the apps again to your new phone. Imagine if I had to do this in an emergency and I had a metered connection where I only had my cell phone connection. It would cost me $40 to restore the phone data. And it won't even do it right, keep in mind. Because what happens is this is on Android 14, but this out of the box was on Android 13. And as the apps are being downloaded, from the Play Store fresh, it's like, oh, I need the Android 13 apps or whatever tuning happens there. And when the apps automatically start up when they've been downloaded, which some of them do, they're like, whoa, you know, now we're on Android 13. Maybe it ditches its config. It's really hard to tell what happens, but things end up being misconfigured. You end up having this backport of versions for a lot of the configuration after you've restored it from this, or maybe you didn't restore it. It's impossible to say. Uh, and then you end up with, some corrupted configuration over here. But then this thing has to update to Android 14, which then is the same as this one, which would have been much better if it did the update first and then did the transfer. I don't know why. Whatever. It doesn't work that well. And you can see right off the bat. Let me see if I can get this thing to unlock. This is my home screen on the old one, and this is the home screen on the new one. It didn't transfer anything. I have to redo my entire home screen configuration again because I don't know. You'd think Google software would would restore itself from its backup. I understand that there's some software implementation stuff, but frankly, none of the Google software is the best quality software on this device, especially when it comes to the multi-screen and split screen and the extended screen stuff. I've had more problems with the Google software than I've had with random third-party software. What? Your first-party software should be the best on the thing. It shouldn't be the worst on the thing. But it is. So let's talk about the continued usability problems of this. Okay, so it cleared off all my settings. I have to restore all this stuff. I have to re-go through all these tutorials as if I haven't done it already on this device. And of course, a lot of these are unskippable tutorials, which Awesome. Nothing better than an unskippable tutorial. But let's talk about actually using, the foldy screen like the selling point is. Excuse me while I set this up. Okay, so here we have message compose on Gmail. Of course, it didn't restore my keyboard settings because, of course, why would it restore the keyboard settings? That's not important. It's clearly not something you interact with that much at all that should be, transferred across from the backup to restore, obviously. So we're trying to compose an email on the tiny screen, and this works well. This front screen works well. It has some weird, or at least my old one had some weird sensitivity issues down in the corner. Go figure. I don't know, but here we are. So let's say you're composing something on this, and you're like, "Wow, I really want to use the big screen to compose this because that's what a power user would do, and that's what kind of the selling point is." And here we are. Pardon the shininess. It's just a shiny phone. But let us count the ways this wastes screen real estate. This wastes more screen real estate than my multi-monitor system had back in 2005. I didn't even have this many pixels to waste, and yet it wastes them, right? So the sides wasted. You could do something about that. I swear you could do something about it. The sides are wasted. This whole top bar here, right? It's never used for anything. It's always wasted. And you have all these pixels from here to there that are just wasted. They'll just always show black in like most apps for basically ever. Same with right here, also wasted. This keyboard down at the bottom, that's wasted. Look at all that space that's wasted. The keyboard is okay. I mean, it works. You can do the two thumb typing. It has this interesting variety of layouts. This one, I thought this would actually be more useful, this layout. I haven't quite got the hang of it, so I typically stick with this one. I think if your hands were less chunky than mine, maybe it's a bit more useful. So this is a waste of screen space. It doesn't actually end up being very useful because you have so little space for your actual content to fill stuff in. But that's okay, right? Because you're thinking, well, that's fine. I'll just rotate the device this way and use it this way. Look at this. This is much better. It still wastes a bunch of space here, still wastes a bunch of space here, but you have way more content space to do, and the keyboard is in a good position. And you can put this screen at a different angle, such like that. Excellent. And in fact, given the weight distribution of this phone back here, especially with the chunky chin of these stupid cameras, it's excellent to hold it this way. So I'm thinking, sweet, I only want this orientation when the phone is open. I don't want the other orientation. The other orientation is no good. No bueno. Only this orientation is good. And, this seems perfectly reasonable of something I should be able to do. I have screen rotation off. So to me, that implies it's not going to rotate because it says it's off, right? So it's not going to auto rotate. Keep that in mind that the UI says rotation is off. So I do my thing. I close it. Back to come on, come on, come on, come on. There we go. I'm back to working on it this way, which is fine. Again, this is standard cell phone stuff. But then I want to go back to the power user mode, right? Right? Wait, why did it rotate? And in fact, it always defaults to this rotation when you open it. It always defaults to the bad rotation when you open this screen. Now it has this interaction. You can either turn on, the auto rotate or not. The auto rotate, I'll get into why that's stupid in a moment. But there's this like little interaction that sometimes shows up if you wing it enough that lets you rotate it quickly. Quickly. Mind you, it shouldn't have done anything in the first place. It should have just started like this. But you got to do a little dance because, somebody at Google didn't think this through. So yeah, it's such a pain in the ass. Like there's no way around it. Like I can't imagine somebody actually used this for a while and thought defaulting always, regardless of what the user says, to this orientation was a good idea. So you're like, okay, Corey, look, you're being a pain in the butt. Just turn on auto rotation, and yeah, there's a bit of a delay. Um, but you should be able to, where did auto rotation go? You should be able to easily use auto rotation to switch it between orientations, right? Yep. Okay, cool. Excellent. Um, okay, it doesn't do this for orientation. Why not? Is there a problem with this orientation? Is it computationally more difficult to do this rotation than all the other rotations it does support? I have no idea. But it doesn't do that rotation, so that's also dumb. Um, so whatever, you have auto rotation on. Now, there's a fundamental flaw in how auto rotation is implemented, not just in this phone, but in all phones. And I'm going to give this idea for free to all phone makers. Orientation of the phone shouldn't be determined by gravity, but where the freaking user's face is, right? Like if the phone should be oriented to my head, not to gravity. The whole gravity orientation thing was a proxy to the time where we could actually observe somebody's head and rotate it like that. But guess what? We have the technology. It's there. The camera's there. We have the neural network capability to detect somebody's orientation of their head. That's a free idea for you cell phone makers. Orient the camera, orient the screen to somebody's face, not gravity. And, here's orientation. I'm going to rotate my head, right? This orientation doesn't make sense with my head rotated. It does nothing, right? So it's going to be the wrong rotation. If your head isn't aligned with gravity. Heaven forbid somebody lays down with auto rotation on and wants to use their phone from the correct orientation. That's unacceptable. You gotta orient yourself to gravity, and the software is weirdly limited such that that's the only way you're gonna get it. So free idea for cell phone companies. Orient the devices according to someone's head, not gravity. Free idea. Go ahead, take it. Just stop pissing me off with these poorly designed UIs. Okay, continuing with the brokenness. Right. There's so many things. Um, okay, so yeah, it doesn't restore your settings. That's irritating as all heck. It forces a bunch of tutorials on you. Irritating as all heck. Rotation's bad. Orientation's bad. Whatever. Let's talk about some of the other Android features. Give me a moment to do this. I gotta jump through some hoops to demonstrate this because it can't be easy. Okay, so I have here, I'm watching Dune on the other screen or something. Naturally, my phone goes to sleep. That's fine, right? We're prepared for this. We have a lock screen interactable thing. Once again, let's examine the UI usage, the space usage here. All right, big chunk of space wasted here, and this is an over 2 hour movie, right? Look at this bar, and look at the size of my finger, right? My finger covers like 25 minutes. It's no way that this bar is useful for navigating through anything with a finer precision of plus or minus 25 minutes, or more like 12 minutes. It's so difficult. You gotta like baby tap it. And a lot of these software do something wrong, and it's very difficult for you to see here. But when you lift up your finger, there's suddenly this high amount of noise in the positioning of your finger. So right before you lift your finger off the screen, the position has a high amount of noise to it. What should happen, but doesn't, is it shouldn't respond to those noisy events, and it should have some type of delay or filter that lets it then go back to where you tried. Because not only is it difficult to get within, you can't even, I can't even see where this button is over the size of my giant finger. And by the way, we have all the space we can use. We have the space available. We have the technology. It can be done. But combined with that kind of high error rate, it's so difficult to this is useless, right? For movies, this is useless. For like short songs, it's pretty good. But I like movies and DJ mixes, audio players, free idea. this is a terrible way to interact with long media, but here we are. But we'll continue with the faults. Um, Here is the play pause button. I think it is. It's so tiny that my giant finger makes it difficult to see, but that should be okay because the tap target should be large enough that even if it's occluded by my finger, I should be able to make it. Kind of. For some reason, they put this little grayed out thing there. I don't know what it does. It just says other device. You tap it, it doesn't seem to do anything. I don't know why it's there. It also says the device here. Is it supposed to say the device? Is it supposed to let me go to a different device? I don't know. I don't think Google knows. Um, so that's okay. That tap target, it doesn't do anything. So you can be kind of messy with this, but only kind of because look, right there, there's a wee little button that if you're not careful, you will. Oh, I just stopped my movie playing. What if you're just trying to pause it? You're like that was my pointer finger. This is my thumb. My thumb is even worse for these things. It's so big that it's so easy for me to accidentally hit the wrong button. Why? Look at all this space. It could be. We can fit so much interaction in here. Slaps the hood type of thing. But no, we've decided that interaction takes secondary to I don't know what that is. Maybe visual design, whatever. It's bad. Okay, I'm almost done. There's a lot you could tear apart about Android devices and this device especially when it comes to poor screen real estate utilization. It's chock full of it. There's only one other thing I want to touch is just the general unreliability of the software. The weird stuff that I've experienced attempting to use this for multitasking. I don't understand why some of this is so bad. A lot of software. See, why is it asking me this? I've already answered this question. Whatever. A lot of the software, it just works strangely when you're trying to use it in, multitasking mode. Again, I only want this orientation. This is the only comfortable one on this device that's useful. And of course, it's not the one that lets you do it. But it doesn't work that well to do this split screen interaction. I don't know. There's this interaction where you go back and forth like this to go between your previous and last app. However, there's some timing associated with it. If you go back, oops, right, if you go back to your previous app and you sit there for a while, sometimes you can't go this way again. Sometimes it just doesn't let you go back to it. There's some weird timing aspect to it, like it just maybe it puts the activity to sleep of the other one, but then you can't go back to it, and you got to go do this again, and then you got to do this tap again, and then the things go weird all the time. I thought this was set to yeah. Well, anyways, ah, I'm done. There are so many problems with this, and they've been problems with the Android and Google Pixel line for so long that I think my hypothesis is true for Google. I don't think they have the organizational competence to solve some of these problems. And this isn't unique to Google. This is just a trend on the inshitification of stuff. When when the cost of failure is so high, and in America the cost of failure is so high, we have these massive corporations that can produce poor quality products, and they will absolutely nuke you from orbit if you're a small company. And they can't even take the risks to do interesting stuff. That's a problem. Small companies should be able to take risks and not worry about a megacorp nuking them from orbit because they have all the resources. I know somebody's probably going to go, "Why did you go into politics?" Politics are everywhere. If you got multiple people trying to achieve something, you got politics involved, and politics percolate from the top down. We've established in our political system in the US that you just got to aim for getting too big to fail. How you get there doesn't matter. Once you're too big to fail, you're safe. You'll get bailouts. You'll get preferential treatment by the Supreme Court. You'll get the ability to buy out your competitors if they so much as do a mildly creative thing that you want, and then you can just delete the competitor. And this is kind of an example of it. Has some interesting ideas, but truly an enshittification of the foldable. 2 out of 5 stars. Do not recommend.